Hello and welcome to this next episode of this YouTube series, Building an Effective Productivity System. In this series, we're going step by step through the different elements of my COPE productivity system. COPE's not a new idea, but it is one that I'm using, and that is collect, organise, plan and execute. We've been through collect, we've been through organise, we're now thinking about the planning phase, and this week we're looking at habits and routines and how they fit into our plans to be more productive. So what is a habit? What is a routine? They can seem like they're quite similar, but I tend to think of them differently. So a habit would be any action that you do that's you perform repeatedly. It could be good, it could be a bad habit. It's not really a task, although you can treat it as one. For example, showering, cleaning your teeth, those are habits that you might do every single day, but you wouldn't put those on a task list. Habits can be very, very powerful tools for shaping our focus, for shaping our everyday life, and for bringing about long-lasting change. But a routine, on the other hand, I consider those to be general maintenance tasks of some kind or another that you might need to do daily, weekly, monthly, yearly, whatever. Routine tasks are things that they need to be done, but they're never going to be important in and of themselves. It tends to be the case that it doesn't bring about a huge benefit each time you do it, but if you neglect it for too long, then it can become a really big problem. So to have an effective productivity system, we can't ignore these. We can't ignore our habits, we can't ignore our routines. If we ignore the mundane, the routine tasks, that's going to come back to bite us down the line. When it comes to habits, they're important too, and for that I refer you to James Clear. James Clear writes in the excellent book, Atomic Habits, you do not rise to the level of your goals, but you fall to the level of your systems. And then James Clear elaborates by saying your goal is your desired outcome, your system is the collection of daily habits that will get you there. So let's start by thinking about our routines. Now, these need to be in your task manager. If we're not in control of these, they can become the bane of our lives, really. And I've got this 5-step process for getting on top of our routine tasks. Now, I've released a podcast on that, and you can listen to that. There's a link down in the description below. And I've also summarised that in a blog post, which is also going to be linked to in the description below. The basic steps are here. So number 1, inventory. You've got to identify and define all of your routine tasks. So open up a note in your notes app, a blank one, open up a page in a notebook, and just make a list of all of the routine tasks that you have to do every single day, every single week, every single month, every single year. And these routine tasks can really be anything. So here I am in UpNote. I'm going to open up a new note and I'm just going to call it routine tasks, and then simple bullet points will do for this stage. So what might your routine tasks be? Let's go for clean the bathroom. That needs to be done. Clean the kitchen. Take the bins out. What else might need to be done? Sweep the floor. Any routine task that you might have, just make a long list. Now, once you've listed everything, you're going to have a longer list perhaps than this, but this is just an example for the purposes of this video. For the purposes of brainstorming, I would have it just as a bullet list, but then I would want to create a table. UpNote, you can't paste bullet points into a table and have each bullet point come in a different row, but it's very easy to just cut it to the clipboard and then go to a blank spreadsheet in sort of Google Sheets and then just paste it in. And then I'm going to need 3 columns. And then you just copy that. And then if you go back to UpNote and you've got your table. So let's make this a header column. We're going to need that. So what you want to do now is you need to filter this list. Now you've got your basic questions that you want to ask. Is this something that you actually need to do? It may well be that some of the items on this list that you've made here are things that really, they don't need to be done. And if they're things that don't need to be done, it's worth thinking about whether or not it's worth doing them. Can I delete them if they don't need to be done? The next question is this something that needs to be done by me, or is it better done by somebody else? Now, the reality of life is that a lot of these routine tasks we might be able to delegate to people, but that doesn't necessarily mean we should and that it's right to, because somebody's got to do them. And it may well be that the best way that we can serve the people around us is by taking care of these things ourselves, And then the last question is, can I automate it? So, a lot of people might say, well, actually, I can set up a direct debit for that, paying the credit card bill, so I can automate that one. You may not want to do that. You may want to have more control over your finances and a better understanding of what you're actually spending on your credit card than just automating the payment of it so you never have to think about it. That's up to you. But go through this list and make a note of whether or not it's something that actually needs to be done, something you can delete, something you can delegate, or something that you can automate. And that is a brilliant way of filtering the list. Now, the third thing that you're going to need to do to get on top of these tasks is to consider their frequency. Some of them, it'll be obvious. Others of them, you've got a little bit more freedom to decide. So you need to think through, how often do you need or want to do these things? So for example, you might say a full data backup is something that you want to do every 6 months. Arranging a car service in every MOT, that is an annual thing, because it needs to be done annually. Sweeping the floor is a daily task. Go through the whole list and just make a note of the frequency. How often do you want to do it? How often do you need to do it? Now, once you've got your list and you've chosen your desired frequency, you come to the fourth stage. You have to take control of it. And this is where your task manager and sometimes your calendar comes into play. Now, most of my routines go on my task manager, but some of them go on my calendar. Now what I've got is I've got a demo set up. Now what I've got here is I've got this nifty side-by-side set up. So I've got Todoist open on this side to show you, and I've got a calendar open on this side to show you. Now what I've done in Todoist is I've set up a routines project, just a folder within Todoist with all my routines, and I've got 4 sections: daily, weekly, monthly, yearly. This is all taken from Carl Pauline's way of handling routines, and there are some great videos that he's produced on his YouTube channel that go through how to do this. Generally speaking, it goes in daily if it's not necessarily every day, but every other day or every few days. Weekly would generally be something that's happening every week or every 2 weeks. Monthly would be anything that's happening every month or every 2 months, and then yearly would be anything that's every 6 months or every year, or more than that. For example, in an old job, I had to get a 5-yearly wiring check done. That went in my yearly routines because it was more than a year. But just to give you an idea of the kind of things that are in there, in my daily one, I've got a Coram Deo planning thing, process action today. I'll show you that on my calendar in a second, which is to do with email. Habit tracking, general tasks around the home. Weekly would be things like, again, other general maintenance tasks. Monthly tends to be more admin related. There are very few sort of chores that need to be done monthly, and then yearly are sort of legal requirement things most often. Data backup I tend to do every 6 months, and a full review of the Coach system. I like to spend half a day or so going through all of my productivity system, the way I'm doing things, the apps that I use, all of that, half a day or a day once a year, once every 6 months sometimes. But then some tasks, some routines are better served on your calendar. And that's why I've got this open here. So for example, what I tend to do is if I start work at 9, I'll have maybe 10 or 15 minutes where I'm just sort of getting myself set up for the day. And then I have an hour and a half of focused work, and then a little bit of time at around about 11 o'clock. I normally give myself half an hour to process my email inbox. And that is going to be a repeating task. I'm going to do it every weekday. And so there it is. I've got a repeating task in my calendar every weekday to process my inbox. And that's just another way of managing your routines. If there's something that you need to do at home, like a daily chore that happens after dinner every day, you might want to slot out half an hour at around about 6 o'clock for that or whatever. So those are the different ways in which you can take control of these routine tasks. And then that brings us to the last point, point 5 on this 5-point system: review it. You've got your list, you've got it all set up, you've got it running really, really well. But every 6 months or so, I would go through the things that are on your task list in your routines folder, go through the things that are on your calendar, and just ask all of those questions again. Are they still relevant? Are they still something that I need to do? Is this still important? For example, circumstances often change. Your job, your role might change, meaning some of the routines that you've got set up for work are no longer necessary. Your situation might change, meaning that some of the routines you've got set up for your home and your family and life admin, you just don't need to do them anymore, so get rid of them. Or it might well be that technology has improved, meaning that some things can be automated that couldn't before. So it is worth just going through every 6 months or so, asking those questions to make sure that you're not wasting your time, you're not doing things that don't need to be done, and you're not doing things that you don't need to do anymore. And then just follow the plan. When these tasks show up in your to-do list, it's rare that you might want to give them a priority or make them an objective for your day. The only time that that's ever happened to me was once when it was urgent that I got a haircut, and even though that was a routine task, it was one of my objectives for the day. If you'd seen me, you'd know why. Most of the time, they're just going to be sitting there, and there'll come a point in the day, if they show up on your calendar, do them when they're scheduled for. Most of the time, it'll be in the spare moments or at set times of the day when you have for this kind of thing, and you'll just run through them and keep on top of them that way. So that's how you handle routines. When it comes to habits, there are 2 tools here that are going to be helpful for you that you can use to get on top of this. One of those would be a habit tracker, and the other one of those might be, again, your calendar. Now, I suspect for most habits, we're probably going to need to use both of them. But before we get to that, first thing, when it comes to building habits, we cannot do everything at once. So I would advise we limit trying to build new habits to probably a maximum of 2 new habits at a time. Now, once you've got a streak of sufficient length, you can then maybe build in another one or another 2. So habit trackers, they are useful tools, but they do have some inbuilt weaknesses. Most of the habit actions that you're going to want to do are going to require some kind of time to complete them. So, for example, if you want to read for 30 minutes a day, or write for 30 minutes a day, or go for a run, which is going to take 30 to 40 minutes a day, depending on how you do it, a habit tracker will be great at helping you track whether or not you've done it, but it's not going to show you the time that it's going to take to actually complete that each day. These things need to go on your calendar. That's why you need both. If you're building a new habit that requires you to give time to it, the only effective way to do that is to allocate time to it on your calendar. It's pretty foolish to assume that that's just going to happen, that you're going to have time for that magically, that it'll just appear from somewhere. As the Merovingian would say, if we never take time, how can we ever have time? So if you want to read for 30 minutes a day, or write for 30 minutes a day, or go for a run, stick it on your calendar. That's the only way you'll know that you've got time for that thing. You see, habit trackers, they're great at what they're designed for, but they're designed just to be trackers. You actually need to do the work yourself of working out what you need to do in order to build the habit. The app will just track it. That caveat aside, your habit tracker can be useful. Now, I use an app on my phone called Loop Habit Tracker. So here it is. These are just some of the widgets that you can have with Loop Habit Tracker. I've only got 2 habits in at the moment. Those are follow evening routine and take a proper break at lunchtime. Those are things that I'm trying to work on at the moment. And these are the widgets that I use. So you've got these little widgets at the top here, which enable you to actually complete a habit. And when you do that, you can see that down there on the date calendar thing, that is now marked as done for the 19th of January. Same with this one. That is now done. It just shows you how you're doing at a glance. If you look inside the app, you can see what you've been doing for the last week or so. And if you click on the individual habit, you get a lot of data about how it's going. For example, I really like Loop Habit Tracker, and I've been using it for a while. We can sometimes just really overcomplicate these things because all of the different stats and everything that you have in a habit tracker app could just be overcomplicating things. And all you really need to do is know whether or not you've done something today. And you can do that in a notebook. a lot of people are finding a lot more positives in doing it the old way with simple pen and paper. So you've got a notebook journal or a bullet journal or something like that. You can put a habit tracker in it, and it's very easy to just keep track of things on a day-to-day, week-to-week basis. So my advice is, yes, use a habit tracker, but don't overcomplicate it. This doesn't need to be a big deal with lots of metadata and statistics and all of that kind of stuff. You're not going to keep it for decades to come necessarily. The aim is to build good habits that promote healthy living, healthy lifestyle, healthy change, growth, development, all of that kind of stuff. The point is, keep it simple. The core and what's important is that we build those habits, not that we build an effective way of tracking them. So an effective productivity system is going to manage your mundane routine tasks, and an effective productivity system is just going to harness the power of habits to build effective systems to bring about long-lasting change and improvement. So if you've liked this video, then please do hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, there is more to come. Check out these other videos that are showing up on the side of your screen now as we look at other parts of the building an effective productivity system, and we look forward to joining you on the next video.